Can radical transparency be an effective strategy within the supplement industry? While this subject matter exploration began almost a decade ago through various strategic management consulting projects, it has also found its way into many of my content pieces, maybe at times with slightly varied terminology like traceability. But the inspiration behind this current examination of radical transparency has roots in what first motivated me to investigate this management philosophy. A few weeks ago, I'm scrolling LinkedIn and I see the story shared that had an image of this fluorescent neon yellow stick pack supplement and the founder that looked familiar, but I couldn't instantly recognize him. After opening the article, I got enough information that identified why I knew Michael Pressman and the supplement brand name before the stupid paywall stopped me from getting the whole story. For those that aren't familiar, Michael Pressman launched the disruptive apparel brand Everlane that currently generates around $200 million in annual revenue. Yet that sales activity isn't what drew me to Everlane. It was the company's approach to radical transparency, specifically around its price strategy. Everlane breaks down the true cost of each item, displaying prices for variables like materials, hardware, labor, duties, and transport. And while they seem to have eliminated this part now, Everlane would explain their markup on the true cost and provide you with a benchmark rate comparison of the apparel industry. Additionally, Everlane was radically transparent behind every sustainable aspect of its business, going the extra mile to provide sourcing details on its products. Ultimately, Everlane did a tremendous job reverse engineering and appealing to the modern millennial shopping mindset, one that's more aware, more ethically conscious, and more skeptical. This was something I talked about with Mark Glazer, founder and CEO of NutraBio, in a Joshing Around vlog episode filmed in February of 2020.
There's transparency could be seen in so many different ways. I work in a lot of other categories, and I try to pull things that I find unique from other categories. And one brand that I really have always loved and have tried to advocate other kind of business models in our space to do is that there's a company called Everlane. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's a clothing company. They do basics. They do a lot of things around like their sourcing. They have a really good story behind all of the products. But what they really do unique is that they have a full transparency pricing model where they basically say, it's $32. There's $4 in labor. There's $1 in materials. There's all these, and it breaks it down to the point of like they even say, we make $4 of everything. That's our profit. Right. So you could see full transparency through all the different testing or sustainable sourcing, and like here's our administrative costs. And it's like basically like kind of how nonprofits have to break out all their costs to like publicly report those. It has applications to our space, maybe not to the full level, but even what you're talking about, like there's certain things that you do that other people maybe don't do. Right. And you charge a customer maybe a little bit more, but do they understand maybe all those costs? They maybe they probably don't. They might think, well, he's making more profit than anybody's making his own products, but they don't understand that you're also putting in all these other things to do that.
Right. A lot of people think that in the industry, know this is untrue. But a lot of people will say, well, you're making your own products because you're saving that upcharge from the contract manufacturer to yourself, and now you eliminate that. And anybody who really knows what I'm doing here, it's impossible. I can't build that infrastructure here for one brand. And no, not everybody's looking for it, and that's the argument I get a lot. Well, so transparency, most consumers don't give a shit. They look at a label, they don't care. Or most consumers have no idea if you're transparent. Well, that's not a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
Because some people aren't interested. That's okay, that's fine. But you don't stop doing something that's transparent, that's full disclosure, that's real open and honest with the customer, because there's a segment of the market that doesn't care. You try and push forward and get better and better. That's been our philosophy for 23 years.
You're being authentic to yourself, and you're going to find the other people that support that authenticity. The more transparent you get on those levels, and that's kind of the point of the Everlane thing, where they're so transparent. Eventually, like all the cards are on the table.
Right.
Are you going to match me or not? I'm showing you all my cards. Type of situation.
And we say we were the first to do this years ago. That's not to say that people are coming behind us are copying. No. We're proud of the fact that the industry has changed. But overall, I look at the whole industry as a community that we can all work together. And one other thing about what you're saying with all this transparency in this other company is it's got to be real.
Yeah.
It can't be a marketing gimmick where you're saying this stuff, and then 6 months or a year or two down the years later, you get caught on it.
Yeah.
You really have to live it. You have to feel it. It's got to be a passion in the whole company. If it's just strictly a marketing strategy, you're going to, at some point in time, you say, "It's not worth it here. Let's cut a corner here. Let's cut a corner there." Or you're cutting corners the whole time. You're just using it as something to market. So it's really got to be the core of your business.
While I'm certainly not some tastemaker that has the power to mark significant achievement status, it's hard to argue that a guy with no fashion sense that only purchases clothing on clearance discussing Everlane business strategy out of the blue midstream at a supplement brand manufacturer means it reached a significant level of cultural recognition. Generally, when that happens, entrepreneurs have a desire to build another one. So, what were those fluorescent neon yellow stick packs? Magna calls itself the world's first magnesium powered daily hydration formula. In fact, Magna hydration powders are made with three forms of magnesium along with electrolytes. Leading with the tagline for those who play the long game, Magna caters to active lifestyle consumers that care a lot about improving their long term health. And you might be asking, what does a guy from the apparel industry know about dietary supplements, anyways? But here's maybe the crazy thing that few pundits want to acknowledge about today's supplement industry. Winners and losers are rarely created by solving some complex science problem with VMS products. That being said, Michael Pressman did correctly spot a potential market opportunity in that most adult Americans are magnesium deficient. Furthermore, he had conviction in connecting the supplement trend and leveraging a sequence of other dimensions shaping the future of the supplement industry with a key driver of demand. Let me break this down because I think it can be helpful to those that are thinking about starting a supplement company. I always like to look at drivers of demand first because those are the shifts in consumer behaviors that fuel commercial opportunity. In this example, it's that the next generation thinks about health as this status symbol. And more individuals have begun viewing themselves as consumers in the healthcare market compared to solely being patients. Because of that, consumer healthcare has begun evolving from this reactive, one size fits all approach to a distinctively proactive, personalized, and integrative approach. In terms of what that means for founders of supplement companies, that shift in culture has made consumer health products from functional foods, functional beverages, and nutritional supplements to smart tech wearables and a whole lot of apps more attractive for those that want to take health into their own hands. So then you look for possible connections with consumer driven areas that are emerging within the category. Again, in this case, Magna, it's leveraging a key ingredient, magnesium, its associated benefits and use occasions around mood, relaxation, and sleep, a popular form factor in stick packs, and consumer preference leading indicators like Google search trends. Finally, Magna examined historical and current retail sales data trends for validation purposes. Oh, and you'd expect this from a successful fashion entrepreneur jumping into the supplement industry, but Magna also has a beautiful visual identity. And this can't be overstated enough, but within the lower barriers to entry CPG categories like supplements, if your communication strategy is primarily focusing on functional ingredients, you'll end up with a transient advantage. And that's because those product features are super easy to copy and provide an insufficient long term defensible moat. Instead, those ingredients should move to the background over time and become foundational support of the health and wellness need state that's targeted, which will guide your entire internal and external business activity. So, savvy founders will then need to use those functional ingredients in a slightly different way to support their bold strategic narrative. For Magna, that bold strategic narrative seems to be focused on being your best and not the typical sports or athletics mantra of being the best. But it's still super early in the brand's life cycle, so you likely won't notice much of that in its community building or content layers, as Magna should be focusing on creating individual connections in this stage. Now, all these sound strategic decisions doesn't mean Magna will be successful on any level, let alone the $200 million revenue mark like Everlane. But it does increase the probability of that result. But more importantly, to the main focus of this content, if brand authenticity is upheld and Magna acts consistent with its tagline for those that play the long game, then it could also disrupt the supplement industry by channeling some of that radical transparency elements that Everlane championed within the fashion industry. But don't let that fool you because the supplement industry has been historically more transparent than the fashion industry already. And while I don't have some cross industry analytical tool to prove that statement, it's logical to think that this is true, likely because the products are ingested and thus require more of a transparent management philosophy. Though, as Mark Glazier noted in our conversation from 4.5 years ago, every supplement company must play a part in pushing the industry towards a better future. And in a May 2021 content piece, I laid out this likely future shift from transparency to traceability.
Now, supplement brands have historically used their level of transparency as some type of marketing differentiation point. But what was transparent in 2011 or 2017 or even today is not necessarily anything outside the market expectations in the near future. Supplement brands know that consumers base their purchases not only on the product's effectiveness and quality, but also other elements like the company's transparency efforts or maybe their sustainability efforts. Supplement brands also definitely need to continue to push the envelope on differentiation points in a very competitive industry. And that combination will create opportunities for supplement brands that definitely want to put in the required work and push the boundaries on current consumer expectations around transparency to stand out. Supplement brands will start to demand the supply side to provide them more transparency. So this could be from contract manufacturers, this could be from ingredient suppliers, this could be from some of the flavor suppliers. Brands will start to want to disclose a lot more information because they know this elevated level of transparency will help them foster long-term brand loyalty. Eventually, transparency will turn into full-blown traceability. Ultimately, full traceability is going to be a very large, tough undertaking, but it's already starting to happen now.
And when I said it was happening now, I was thinking about both past and present examples. You might remember from last August, but I created a content piece around the historic connection between multi level marketing and the supplement industry. That same almost century old supplement brand, which eventually became known as Nutrilite and is now owned by Amway, has roots of traceability and still grows many of the plants needed for its products today on something like 7,000 acres of certified organic farms globally. But the best present day example of supplement industry traceability in action can be seen through the vitamin brand Ritual. Through its made traceable approach, Ritual pledges to share the decision making process that impacts its customers and the planet, from an open source supply chain to the human rights involving its supply partners and tracking its overall environmental footprint. Yet, as much as I really respect Ritual for its industry leading transparency and traceability, especially involving the supply side, I want to explore how this relentless approach would look if we combined it with some of the radical transparency elements that Everlane championed within the fashion industry. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's the difference between traceability and radical transparency? Well, traceability is the ability to track any item by means of documented, recorded identification. While manual operations and track and trace data reliability is still a challenge, many believe blockchain technology could revolutionize this business strategy. Alternatively, radical transparency involves sharing information, decision making processes, and even commercially sensitive data such as costs or margins or profit disbursements openly and freely. And because radical transparency is on this constantly adjusting continuum, it would need to also include put all of your cards on the table elements well beyond where Everlane stopped. But could this level of combined radical transparency and traceability really work within the supplement industry? While I haven't seen any examples of this build model even attempted to a large degree within the supplement industry, I wholeheartedly believe it would be successful because of the distinctively bold strategic narrative. Now, by saying that, I also acknowledge the sheer fucking difficulty required to pull it off at the highest level. But as the famous proverb says, there's only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And speaking of elephants, let me address one that's been in the room. For those that know the Everlane story well, either by being a customer, following the apparel brand, or listening to the How I Built This podcast episode with Michael Pressman, There was a public scandal that threatened its ethical image a handful of months after I mentioned the brand within the early 2020 Joshing Around vlog episode. But while that darker point along the Everlane journey might seem like it diminishes the value of using it as my strategic inspiration, I believe that imperfection does the opposite. Because here's what trips up too many entrepreneurs when they look at pursuing radical transparency or traceability. You aren't required to eat the elephant in one bite. Instead, it's initially about embracing the spirit of these pursuits. After that, it comes down to breaking down the pursuit into more manageable SMART goals, setting expectations or standards, aligning incentives of your team, and then understanding that it's an endless opportunity to do better. And that's because there is no project endpoint when pursuing radical transparency or traceability. It's a process of constant improvement. But I just wanted to end with some quick final thoughts. While Everlane and its founder played an inspirational role behind this content, I want to be clear that these radical transparency or traceability concepts presented were not currently, at least from what I could tell, being considered or deployed by Magna. Additionally, though Magna wasn't the focus throughout, I would be remiss if I didn't end off by making a comment about its positioning strategy. Magna, at least this first product, is all about different magnesium forms, though it chose to market itself within the hydration category. I won't go as far as to say that was a poor decision because even crowded categories have tons of opportunity from evolving consumer preferences, but this is a tough market, much more so than the smaller but nascent relaxation category that Magna could sit well within. But I hope you enjoyed the first principles thinking that went into my latest YouTube video. If you did, can you do me a favor by hitting that like button? That quick and free action helps YouTube know my content is worth spreading to more people. Also, we're getting really close to reaching my next subscriber goal, and it would be great if you join me on this journey. But to do that, we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 3/4 of you that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, and that hurts my feelings. Regardless, I want to thank you for giving me some of your attention and time, and I'll see you on the next one.